We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good morning. It is August 24th, 2012, and welcome to today's show. My name is Robert Phoenix, and you're listening to the Friday FARcast. And this portion of my programming, the weekly programming, the Monday, Wednesday, Friday programming, is dedicated to interviews and finding out about the how do I say this? Trying to get to the core of this matrix that we're living in right now. This is what it's all about, and we're uncovering it layer by layer, piece by piece, onion skin by onion skin, and today there are more layers of the onion we need to unpeel. But also, one of the things about this show is that it features interviews more than the other two portions of my programming. And today I'm going to, I'm not sure if I'm going to go 2 hours today, but certainly after I do the intro and talk about what's happened at the Empire State Building and also, to some extent, what's going on with Lance Armstrong, I will get into the interview. And today's interview is with somebody who met me through my website and through the show, and I just thought he was such a remarkable guy that I wanted to spend time with him and actually find out more about his story and get into him a bit more. And I'll talk more about that as we get closer. I've already recorded the interview, and so you're gonna hear that. It's about an hour long, and I think it's worth listening to because it's a really heroic story of somebody who's overcome some tremendous odds, really tremendous odds. So we'll get to that in about maybe 15 or 20 minutes. He goes by the name of Max Bunko, but his name is also Burnie. Okay, so I'll set the stage more for that when we circle back to it. As most of you know, there's been another shooting. It has taken place just outside of the Empire State Building. Now that's significant in and of itself because the Empire State Building is the obelisk, one of the obelisks for the United States of America, outside of the Washington Monument, which is the obelisk for the United States of America. The Empire State Building is the obelisk for New York City, and it is the obelisk for commerce. And an obelisk is, we went over this with Jay Widener on a previous broadcast, the goal of the obelisk, or their purpose, is to draw telluric energy in from the atmosphere. So that's their role. So when you see an obelisk, that's exactly what it's doing, and the telluric energy is being funneled into whatever is near and around that obelisk. So the Empire State Building is an obelisk to industrialism. It is an obelisk to capitalism. That's exactly what it is. and that's what it's there for. And as you have the most iconographic depiction of that obelisk, of course, takes place in the movie King Kong, when the giant ape scales the obelisk with the Vestal Virgin, played by Fay Wray. So that's where it all took place, at the base of the obelisk of capitalism and industrialism in this country. Now, according to reports, 8 people were shot. Everything's sketchy. Everything is sketchy now. And what's really interesting is that if you go back about 10 years ago, not even 10 years ago, like 5 years ago, but if you go back in time, and this is all pre-internet, this is before there were multiple news sources and news channels, when they would have, say, 4 or 5 or maybe 6 major channels on cable, which preceded the internet. When that would occur, the first hour or so, or hour and a half of the event itself, there would be numerous details that would come out. And those details were really salient because those are the details that were raw and unedited. And after the fact, what would happen, and what has happened, is that they would go back and then scrub those details so that the story itself changes very quickly. Well, now they've got this thing down to a science. Now the details are very abstract. They don't give a lot of detail. They say something's happened, and there's just not a lot of detail. So they hit you with a kind of a blunt knife, that's or a blunt object. It's not a bullet to the third eye. It's a blunt object. You get the event, you get some scant details, and then everything is backfilled later. This is how news is being reported now. So in the case of the multiple shooting outside the Empire State Building, I will read to you exactly what the report says. This is says here at least 8 people were shot. At least 8, could be more, could be less, were shot, and according to police, 1 person, possibly the gunman. Okay, just look at that sentence alone. At least 8 people were shot. 1 person, possibly, at least and possibly. So you're getting the headline, but you're getting no details at all. Police on the scene of a shooting. A gunman was shot and killed as a weapon was found near the body. Police are on the scene of a shooting at the Empire State Building in New York City this morning. Details are limited, but witnesses say they heard multiple shots just before 9 a.m. and that 3 people have been wounded. Apparently now there is a story that the guy was laid off. This is what I'm hearing. And he used a shotgun. Now, New York City has some of the hardest gun laws in the country. In fact, if you don't know it, guns are essentially illegal in New York City. You can't buy a gun. You can't purchase a gun inside New York City. I mean, if you go to a place that actually sells guns, they will laugh at you. So here we have another event. Again, the details fuzzy. We don't know whether or not this is an actual event. We got 2 things going on here simultaneously. We've got the frog pot that's being turned up, right? And people are getting cooked in it. So, of course, we're going to have events where people have too much pressure in their lives and they're going to snap. Maybe they're on meds. Maybe they've been tweaked a little bit, not only by life, but by some, psychological process that they're not even aware of. And then all of a sudden they snap and boom, we have a mess somewhere. That's very plausible. These things do happen. It is the nature of the beast in the world that we're living in currently. And then there's the other scenario, which is these things are staged. And they're completely staged, and they're either staged by somebody who has been covertly mind-controlled and triggered and planned in order to do this, or the entire event is staged. I don't know how many of you have been following the aftermath of the Aurora shooting, but the nurse who was in the emergency ward, who watched everything and saw everything, died mysteriously this last week. She drowned, and I think it was in Iowa, of all places. So here's the one person that really had a bird's eye view of what happened in the aftermath of Aurora in that place where, you know, the triage was supposed to happen. She's gone. So we have these events now that are occurring. There are three levels. There's the completely staged, there is the programmed, and then there is the what I call the fishing net scenario, where somebody snaps and voila, they are the quote-unquote lone gunman. But all the conditions, all the social conditioning has occurred in order for that person to go that extra step and wreak havoc on society, take lives, create tragedy, news, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is the world we're living in now. And any of these events will be used to tighten the collective noose around freedoms and rights and security. And this is where everybody who follows this understands this implicitly. There is an implicit understanding that this is taking place. So this is not alternative news. This is not alternative theory. This is not shocking to people anymore. And that's kind of sad that it's not shocking. Because, when it is real, when something does happen, when innocent people's lives are lost, what happens? We're inured to it. We become cynical. Oh, yeah, look what's going to happen next. They're going to go after the guns. They're going to go after veterans, which is apparently starting to happen. I don't know if you followed it, but Brandon Robb was released after, I think, about 3 or 4 days, maybe a week, of being held under psychological and psychiatric evaluation. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about the whole Brandon Robb scenario. It's so easy now to condition people. We don't. The news cycle happens at light speed. I mean, who is Brandon Robb? Do we even know that he's a real person? Just because it happens on Facebook now, is it real? I'm not saying that he isn't real, that he wasn't a Marine Corps vet and he didn't have a Facebook page and he was posting lyrics. But I'm not into being in knee-jerk mode anymore. I'm just not. I'm not going to have my chain yanked and just go ambulance chasing after every single issue that looks like it is going to impact our freedoms and our rights. Because in some ways they will and are, and others they're just as planned and engineered as everything else. Number one, to see how people are going to react, and number two, to condition people that these are the guys that are doing all the bad crap. I just think we have to be really, really judicious around how we direct our attention now and how we direct our energy, because there is a large portion that understands, not even a large portion, it's a very small, selected, intelligent portion that understands that we are attuned to this, and they're going to direct our attention as a result of that. So you've got to use discernment, even when it looks like these issues are going to really hit home and impact you on a personal and spiritual level. You've got to. Which is why I don't jump in the fire as much as I did before. I want to sit back. I'll observe. I'll see what's going on, but I also don't want to be so reflexive that my emotional center is being yanked around willy-nilly. So use a little detachment when this stuff happens. And even when it looks like it's one of your own, theoretically, that is being harmed or imprisoned or violated, that's not to say to turn a blind eye, look at it, observe it, but use your common sense. Ask who, why, how. Always, 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 always. Who, why, how, Lance Armstrong. I wanted to talk about Lance Armstrong a little bit. He has recently come under fire from the United States Anti-Doping Agency. I can't think of a worse use of funds than to create an anti-doping agency. It's just insane. I mean, it's totally insane. This is why we live in an insane world. Because on one level, we have all this research going on to genetically modify humans, to create the super soldier. It's happening. It's been, look what's happening right now in the Army. People are committing suicide at a record rate. This is what we're led to believe, and I don't doubt it. I mean, being in the Army is not right now. Do you want to be in the Army right now? I don't think so. So they're committing suicide at a record rate. So what happens? They give them the nasal spray, which I believe is oxytocin. And if you don't know what oxytocin is, I'll break it down for you. Oxytocin is it's a chemical, a biochemical that is created by the body, by the human body, and it is in abundance in two specific acts and phases in the human body. The first example is when two people have sex, man and woman. And I believe it's got to be a man and woman. I don't know, because I don't have any experience with the other, but I do have experience with the man and woman. So when two people have sex, after they have sex, there is a large amount of oxytocin that is released in the man's body. And that's what makes men fall asleep, is the oxytocin. Not to be confused with OxyContin, the redneck, the hillbilly heroin. No. Oxytocin literally puts that's why men fall asleep. It's not because they find the woman uninteresting. And in fact, the woman should actually be thrilled that the man has fallen asleep. And I'll tell you why. Because the oxytocin is taking effect, and what happens is that the oxytocin thus bonds the man closer to the woman after sex has taken place. So it is a very intelligent secretion. So now the man feels closer. Now the man wants to go farther, deeper, wants to create a life with the woman and have a baby with the woman. And now, once the woman has the baby, the oxytocin kicks in. And her, in a very big way, and it bonds her with the baby. Oxytocin is a bonding agent. And it does cause the person to feel good, feel better, feel more relaxed. And the whole concept around this with the Army is that they would have this oxytocin bonding experience with other soldiers. And that they would treat their fellow soldiers as their children, like protecting their young. That's what oxytocin. They've done this. They've run tests on this. They've already run tests on this. Big tests. And so they will fight for their fellow soldiers to the death. So you've got all this stuff going on. You've got it going on in industry. You've got it going on in the military. You've got people in Hollywood that are using HGH every single day in order to remain younger. You know, all this stuff is very, very prevalent. If you listen to sports talk radio, you can hear commercials for boosting male testosterone. You know, every 15 minutes, three to four companies are simultaneously advertising their testosterone precursors so that men over 40 can have a better libido. So this is all in the environment. This is all part of the culture, and yet there is an anti-doping agency. And what has the anti-doping agency done? Well, it has brought Roger Clemens to trial, spent millions of dollars, and he got off on a hung jury mistrial piece. Barry Bonds, same thing, millions of dollars. You know, he was found guilty on one count. Everything else was thrown out of court. So they've spent millions and millions and millions of dollars to bring these very public figures to trial and they've all pretty much gotten off. Now, Lance Armstrong is a different kettle of fish. Lance Armstrong, of course, won the Tour de France. He won 7 Tour de France medals. And everybody who was cycling at that time, they were all on EPO. All of them. All of them. All of them, okay? And if you weren't, then you were finishing in the back of the pack, and you had absolutely no chance at all. No chance. So the French were pissed because this American came in and dominated their event and took their medals, and the French went back and they tested and they tested and they tested and they tested, and they had samples, and they could not beat Lance Armstrong. And look, people inside the cycling world, they don't really like Lance Armstrong all that much. There's a public persona of Lance Armstrong, and then there's a private persona. The private persona is that people around him thought he was kind of a dick. Okay? Thought he was kind of a dick. And people in the people outside of the cycling world thought he was a hero. Okay? They thought he was a hero. And so there's a real discrepancy between the private and the public person. So now we have a disassembling of the public Lance Armstrong. The U.S. ADA, United States Anti-Doping Agency, had gone after Lance's teammates, people like Floyd Landis, and they went to them and said, "Look, you have got, if you don't testify against Lance Armstrong, we're going to throw you in jail because we have the goods on you. You doped. You doped." And they all said, "Okay, we'll do it," because Lance wasn't all that liked, to be honest with you. He was not that well liked. And the federal government just has millions and millions of dollars at their disposal. I mean, if they want to go after somebody, trust me, they can make it a lifetime effort and just keep pumping the cash out and keep hiring the lawyers and using the American taxpayers' money to enchain them. And even somebody like Lance Armstrong, who has fairly deep pockets, but he would wind up spending all of his money defending this. And if it went public, it could have gotten much worse for him. Now, why is this happening now? I'm not a huge Lance Armstrong fan, but I'm not a Lance Armstrong hater. I don't really have an opinion about Lance Armstrong, but I do have an opinion about why this is happening now. And my estimation is that we are in a politically at a very charged time, and the timing around this is more than a little curious. You have a president, and the president is a mixed race. Some people say he's black. I say he's mixed. And he's a mixed race president who appears to the majority of the American public as being black. And you have a candidate or presumptive candidate running against him who's white, and we have the racial divide and conquer strategy. It's happening. There's been a major blast in racial polarizing propaganda from both camps. And now Lance Armstrong comes into the mix. He's, number one, he's white. Number two, he's a male. He's a white male. And he's a Republican. He's a Bush Republican as well. So he's a sitting duck. This guy is a sitting duck. He is low-hanging fruit. And now they can use this. It's a victory. It is a victory for the federal government. But it is a Pyrrhic victory, as they say. And they can use this in a way that can be very manipulative, extremely manipulative. And I just think the whole thing smacks of hypocrisy because of what's happening, in our culture when it comes to performance enhancement. And not only what's happening in the culture itself, aka Hollywood, but what's happening in the laboratories across this country and what's happening in the military-industrial complex to use these chemicals, these compounds, these emerging nanotech agents to create what ultimately will become the super soldier, which is already here, if I'm not mistaken. So I just think it's again, we live in a world of illusion. So now Lance Armstrong's the bad guy. He went back, he raced the Tour de France. And when he did, he opened up the potential for this to happen. The statute of limitations, which had run out, the federal government couldn't touch him. But now they went after him. They went after him with a big stick. Lots of money. But we live in this world of illusion and confusion and distraction. And it's happening. It's happening all the time, 24/7. So you've got to just remain clear and get through this time. And I'll talk maybe more about that a little bit later. Okay, what I want to do now is I want to talk about the person that you're going to hear my interview with. He goes by the name of Max Bunko, and he met me through this show and my website, and I did a reading for him, and I found him to be utterly charming and guileless and humble and very talented too. He's a photographer, he's a poet, he's a researcher, he's really an interesting cat, and he's in his 70s, and I think he just turned 70, and he's fully engaged in social media. He has a blog, he's on Facebook, obviously he listens to the show. So I just thought, this guy's story needs to be told. So what I want to do is I want to read you something that he sent me, and then I'm going to play the interview, because I think if I read this, it will really give you a sense as to why I wanted to interview him and why I think his life and other people's lives like his are vitally important. So let me read this to you. He says to me, I didn't tell you all the story. I wasn't sure people would want to hear the dark side I took as my path from birth. If I told you this in our first conversation, just blame it on the old age syndrome called repeat ad infinitum. I was born and then I was dying 25 days later. I had a 1 in 1,000 chance to live and lived. As a young man, I had a motorcycle accident where I watched the front wheels of a car heading right for my head and missing by an inch. Then a few years later, flying through the windshield of a VW Bug and missing the steering wheel somehow and landing on the hood badly cut, but alive. Then attempted suicide at 27, where I almost made it to nirvana. Then another attempted suicide, bogus for sure. Just an attempt to get some help and not knowing how to ask. Then it gets foggy and darker. I ended up in this halfway house, and I was drinking anything, aftershave lotion or whatever I could get my hands on. I would go in the bathroom of the room I was in and drink and puke until I could hold it down. My roommate worked for the newspaper, the Examiner, I think, doing I don't know what. He would get drunk and put a priest cassock on. There was another guy who I befriended who had a problem with drinking and violence, and we would go on walks and have some pretty intense conversations. One day I came home, and the would-be Franciscan friar and the violent guy were in a fight, and I tried to break it up. I ended up on the floor, and the guy put a knife to my throat. One wasn't enough, and he ran in the kitchen and got another. Frozen like a bird, I couldn't move. Besides, there was no chance to get to the door in time to get away. Something told me not to run. So I lay there as he pushed 2 knives into my throat, and I looked at him, stared right into his eyes. He stood up and kicked me right in the throat and told me to get the fuck out of the house. I could hardly breathe, but managed to get out the door. What saved me from getting my throat cut was the kindness I showed him in those walks. Our fortunes are a crapshoot, Robert, and I was saved again. Praise Jesus and pass the basket. Send me your money. Have a laugh, says the cosmic joker. I somehow got together with the guy running the house, and he got me into the psych ward at San Francisco General Hospital. I remember them giving me Valium and then going in my room and crushing it, rolling up a dollar bill and snorting it. Stone dope fiend was I. Then the good stuff started to happen. I got a psychiatrist who was actually good for a change. He asked me what I wanted to do, and I answered, death by cop. My plan was to rob a store with a fake gun and take a bullet dramatically dying in the street. I must love drama, but if I was an actor, they'd kick me to the curb for overacting. He wouldn't have it and patiently talked to this wounded, wild animal me and named some treatment options, none of which I wanted, but the thought of a safe place, 3 hots and a cot was an attractive proposition for this loser, and it wasn't a jail cell. I asked him what the hardest was. You don't know me well, but in everything I do, I choose the hardest road with no clue as to why. I chose a place called Synanon, and the next day these 3 guys, 1 white, 2 black, came to talk to me. One of the black guys was one frightening dude. I mean, badass tough. They called me a cocksucker and said they knew I sucked dick on the street, called me every name in the book of insults, testing me to see how I'd react. Well, I passed the test without melting glue. That held me together. In Synanon, besides working at whatever job they threw your way, we play these encounter games where you sit in a circle with a group of people and tear each other apart in any creative way you choose to do it. It can be quite brutal and intimidating. The point being to break your ego down. What was said in that circle stayed in that circle, and you walked out as you walked in. The baggage was left there. Needless to say, you form some strong bonds with people because if you're honest, they know everything about you, all of it. I became buddies with the badass black man, by the way. After a year, I'd had enough and wanted to be back in civilization. So I left Badger, California, where they had a facility, and was driven to Santa Monica and dropped off on Pico Boulevard. I have to say, as one scared puppy dog, and said to myself as I went to a phone booth to call one of my sisters, if there is a God in heaven, my sister will answer the phone. And she did. I had no real plan of staying sober. I didn't think I could in the real world. She told me if I drank, I was out of there. As an act of self-preservation, I went to a local AA club and hung out in a coffee bar and was asked if I was the Hillside Strangler. With my shaved head and wild eyes, I fit the bill. You have to understand that I've gone to many meetings in my life and never heard what I needed to hear from all the suits that seemed to populate the places I went. It was really more like I wasn't ready to listen. I didn't know at that precise moment I was ready to listen now. I finally went to a meeting one afternoon, and these 2 guys in the corner across the room from me each shared their experience, and a miracle happened. It brings tears to fill my eyes. It brings tears to fill my eyes as I write these words. I saw in a daydream while they talked a picture of me standing on third base, and I started running as fast as I could, stealing home plate. As I slid into that plate, the catcher missed the tag. The umpire spread his hands and made the gesture. I was safe at home. This is literal, by the way, exactly how it went down. Those 2 guys and I became great friends. One of them was the best man at my wedding. To show you how insidious this addiction shit is, Dan, my friend, my best man, shot himself in the heart a couple of years after this. Rest in peace. You never had my friend. Mike is still alive and kicking and still one of my best friends. I got married at 39 and had my first child. I'll leave her name out. Another miracle for one such as I. Then 18 months later, as I was wondering how I could love someone as much as I loved her, my other daughter was born. I discovered a new law of the universe. Love expands infinitely. It has no boundary. So my heart made room for 2. They have grown up to be beautiful women, both on the inside and out. I don't know how all this happened, but it did, and I am truly blessed. I could have turned into something quite horrible and somehow crawled my way onto the Tao, the right road. I have to say that it is fact that I know nothing, and obstacles get me tripped up, but I have my eye on the path, and the world does not revolve around me, although I'd like it to, he says, smiling. Robert, this is what I didn't say that should have been said. The backstop that informed me of the universe and its immense wealth and possibility. I don't know if this can be put in my interview somehow, but it would give it more sense. Having said that, I value you. It is your gig. And there we go. So I just shared that with you. I shared with you, and I'm sure there are other details, but obviously this is somebody who has experienced tragedy, pain, suffering, hell. He's been in hell. And he pulled himself out of that and had himself pulled out of that too by surrendering and allowing the capacity for love and redemption, faith, to come in and play a role in his life. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play the interview. I'm going to play the interview with my friend Max and allow you to kind of hear his voice and also get a taste of his poetry, because I'm going to read a poem of his, which is very profound. And before I play this, I just want to share the reason why I wanted to interview him, because unlike Lance Armstrong, who used every single drug to his advantage in order to gain fame and fortune and a position of power in society that would allow him to do many, many things, have doors open to him that would not have been open to him had he not achieved a certain type of celebrity. Max had to go through hell, and his ability to transform and then transcend it, to me, is every bit as heroic as anything Lance Armstrong ever did, even though Lance Armstrong, I believe, is the victim of a political plot and intrigue at this time. And when we do these things in our lives, I think they have great merit, because we don't understand completely the mechanism of consciousness, or the organic mechanism of consciousness. When somebody overcomes something, when somebody breaks a habit, when somebody does something different against the grain, when somebody, instead of reacts, sits back and listens and takes in a piece of criticism and then changes their lives, or when somebody does something kind, these things are not inert. They don't happen in a vacuum. They go somewhere. They absolutely go somewhere. And that place that they go to is a wellspring of consciousness. What is this here? What's going on here? Getting all these things happening now. Oh man, I hate this. Yeah, here we go. So there's a wellspring of consciousness that all of this goes to, and it feeds us. So whatever you do, don't ever think that your life is insignificant. Don't ever think that anything that you overcome is insignificant. It is tremendous. It is heroic. And it is the thing that keeps us in the game, both on an individual level and a collective level. Because if you look around, clearly look around, and see what's taking place with the amount of control, the measures of control, the technology, the surveillance, the weapons, the covert agreement and planning. When you see all these things taking place, if you step back and really looked at it, you'd be steamrolled, you'd be flattened, you'd be overwhelmed by the odds of overcoming any kind of challenge to those types of measures, to those types of strategies. But we can't theoretically fight at that level. We can't even fight to begin with, really. But what we can do is we can open up to something far greater and allow this love to permeate our lives and to permeate our existence and to live from that place from moment to moment to moment to moment. And that, my friends, is how we change the world. And it's one life at a time. So the interview I'm about to play you is one of those lives that has changed the world. And we may not never know how or why, but it has. So it's my great pleasure to play my Q&A with my friend Max, a.k.a. Burnie. I'll be back in about an hour, and I'll wrap the show up, and I'll be in the chat room between now and then. Here we go.
So, all right, first question I have, looking at your chart, how much do you know about your chart, Max?
ですね。右落としてそこに乗って、そのまま行けば大丈夫です。ちょっと右落としてそこにまず乗って、だってさっき何キロで行ったんだろう、ここ。で、あとは細いけどギリギリは大丈夫。大丈夫。崩れない。大丈夫。大丈夫。よし、抜けた。左が取れてるよ。言葉6で安定してるよ。この辺があれだ。郡山のひどいところ。この辺が富岡、町役場とか中心街の富岡の。これダメだ。真ん中くると。歩道曲がる。思いっきりレインコートとか着てるよ。この先右に流れれば見れる。ちょっと出っ張ってるもんな、原発の位置よりもな。よっしゃー 今もう1にセットしたんでさ。これでしばらく食いつなげ。いいか？しばらくそれ食いつなげ。いいか？それ食えない。それ頑張って食いつなげ。いいか？頑張れ。
Sorry for the confusion, boys and girls, but I uploaded the wrong file. Not that file. That was actually the right file. That was Daiichi Walkabout. So I wound up uploading the wrong file, and I used that 11 minutes to get the right file, which was actually on another computer. So I've been hustling to get the right file up here, and I sincerely apologize for that. And what I'm going to try and do now here is I'm going to play the file based on just the sort of the GarageBand application. So it's not going to be uploaded to the Blog Talk server, but I'm just going to play it live here for the sake of expediency. And it seems to be here now. So let's see if I can just grab it and find it and play this thing, all right, without messing around too much longer. So here we go. I appreciate your patience, but this is on the fly for sure. And let's grab this here. And this is the interview with Burnie, aka Max Bunko. All right, let me just turn this up a little bit, and I'll be back in about 45 minutes or so after the interview ends. Again, thank you for your patience. I apologize.
So every now and then I run across people, or people run across me. It's usually one of these, very kismetic, synchronistic, cosmic collisions of life forms in real space or cyberspace or hyperspace. And it happens more often than not, and I'm always astounded and amazed by the profundity and the creativity and the spirit of people that I come in contact with through the show. And my next guest is one of those people. His name is Burnie, and he met me through the show and the website and wanted a reading, and we had I thought was a profound connection during the reading. And when he told me more about who he was and some of the challenges and struggles and victories that he's experienced in his life, I was inspired, and I was inspired to have him on as a guest. And as I found out more about him and found out he had a website and really is kind of an inspirational model for many people doing their best to define a life with purpose, I really wanted to have him on the show. So I want to bring him on right now. I want to thank him for doing this and opening himself up to me and to everyone else here to hear your story. Burnie, thank you for being with me and everybody else today.
Thanks, Robert. It's a real pleasure. We did make a connection, didn't we?
Yep.
I actually, I don't know why, but I had this feeling before I even wrote you, because I liked your website so much. So.
Well, this is the beauty. This is the beauty of technology. I mean, it's done things in people's lives. It connected people in ways that are really kind of profound, because I know that you met me through Visible, and Visible and I have our connection and started to link to each other on each other's websites. And if it wasn't for Visible and my connection, we wouldn't have met. So there's this really hyperkinetic, linking up that's taking place, which I think is interesting. And let's get this out on the table. You're 71, right?
I'm 70.
70.
I always say 71. I'm rushing it.
So you're 70 years old, and you've gotten into the internet in a very interesting way. We're going to talk about your blog, and we're going to talk about some of your digital or your photography, which you've digitized and put on your blog. But I would love to know when you started to get into the internet, and what was that like for you?
I started to get into it right when it was just starting to go. before there was a lot of advertising and everything was much freer. But I got hooked up when I lived up in Bend. I think I don't remember the year, but it had to be 1990 or so, somewhere in there.
Wow.
So a long time ago.
So you're a web pioneer. Did you get on like the Well or stuff like that?
So what's that?
The Well. It was kind of an early. It was kind of an early version of Facebook, but it was a lot of like cyber geeks and libertarians and interesting people like John Perry Barlow. Did you ever get on the Well during those days?
No, I didn't. And one of the, not to tell a sad story, but I was trying to connect up with people who had the affliction that I have. And that was my main motive at that point. And when it took me a few years to get into what I was really interested in. And that is ancient history, what makes people tick, why do we do what we do, why is there so much darkness, and why is this? I'm almost locking up because there's so many different things that I'm interested in. It's like a smorgasbord. And I find that I am not very well read, and I wish that I was, because I know where I would go now. At 70, I'd love to go back to school.
Yeah. Well, apparently you can do that online now with Harvard or Yale. I guess they have like online curriculum for free, but it's a little bit different than actually, walking up and down the halls of learning and meeting with your professors and all that stuff.
Yeah. In my first endeavors on the internet, I was really working hard. I had a business of my own, so I didn't have a lot of time to spend at it. But as it got, it's like a gold mine to me.
Mm-hmm.
There's, you can look for anything you want to find, you can find. And every bit of knowledge that you would like to have is there available to find out about.
Yeah, I would agree. Totally.
Have you ever heard of the website, the Dark Sun? Is that what it's called? By the guy's last name is Knowles.
Yeah, Christopher Knowles. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just discovered his website, and it's utterly fascinating.
Yeah, Chris is a really bright guy, super bright, very good writer. He's written a couple of really good books. I think one's called Heroes in Spandex, which is all about comic book mythology and things like that. Now he's a very cool guy. People have migrated from his site to my site every now and then. So we're in the same camp.
It's utterly fascinating. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. It is fascinating, and I'll tell you something. I'm not sure because you've been doing this for a while, and I would love your take on it. But I remember typing in a subject or keyword in Google, and 4 or 5 years ago, the search results were really rich. Like if you typed in something semi-alternative research or conspiratorial, you get some pretty eye-popping stuff. Now, when you type things in on Google, the first 2, 3, 4, 5 pages, it's not as richly populated as it used to be. And I'll tell you another thing, Burnie, which is interesting, is that you can have 2 different people in 2 different locations put the same keyword into Google at the same time, and their search results would come up different.
I'll be damned.
Yeah.
Well, the point that you're making, yes, I have very sadly observed it, but that doesn't stop you from once you get to some place that's in the ballpark of things that you're interested in, you'll find your way around.
Yeah.
Yeah. They can't defeat us. That's just corporatizing, the whole internet. And there's ways around that.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's cut to the chase here. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk with you, besides the fact that you're fascinating and your blog is really interesting, is that you have been battling hepatitis. And you've also, as a result of that, and perhaps some other things, you've given up drinking. And I think that, and this has always been my stance, is that these are the things on an individual basis that change the universe. And we don't often see them. They're not headlines. They're not Usain Bolt crossing the finish line with his fingers across his lips in the 200 meters. But here's a man in California dealing with an affliction and dealing with an addiction in addition to the affliction, and facing himself and having a victory that is more important in my estimation than Usain Bolt running across the 200-meter finish line. And these are the stories that don't get told. And I believe also that it's these victories that help propel all of us forward. And we don't understand it. We don't quite understand the mechanism that drives us and feeds into the collective pool of love and support. But it's important, I think, to take time to step back and do recognize these things, and the people that do experience these kinds of victories. And I know it's not easy, but I wanted to talk with you about that because I think it's an important piece for you and for all of us. And I'm not sure where we go with it, but I would love to get your take on where you are with that right now in your life.
Well, as far as alcohol goes, I haven't had a drink since 1976. So it's not really that much of a challenge to not drink.
Mm-hmm.
What the challenge is not, it's sort of like you quit this horrible addiction, but then you have to deal with yourself.
Right.
And that's the hard part. When I was drinking, I'll give you the last week. I was living in a halfway house. I was on lithium. I was drinking. I was blacking out. The day before I went into this hospital, a guy almost murdered me with a knife in my throat because I tried to break up the fight. And that, I'm making it real short, but that particular memory, I carry it. It's my insurance policy because all I have to do is think about that. And there's no doubt that that's what would happen to me, even at 70. I'd go to jail, get killed, or go insane.
Yeah.
One of those things. There's absolutely no doubt. And I'm not, you make it sound like I'm special, but I'm not really special. I just was gifted. I don't know how it happened. And when you say universe-changing decisions, you're absolutely right, because magic happened. I got married and I had 2 children. And for Burnie medicine to say, I have 2 children is is the equivalent to someone climbing Mount Everest. That's how much of a change it was.
Yeah.
And, I'm surrounded by, I have daughters that love me, and I can't describe how that feels to someone like me.
Yeah. Well, it's a very...
Go ahead.
No, that's a very personal feeling. And
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm really described. I can't put in words what it means.
Mm-hmm.
But I got, you know, like a lot of kids, I didn't have a really good situation, to put it mildly. And so actually right now, Robert, in this time frame we're speaking of, that we're talking about, I have discovered new things. You know, and so I'm about to change even more to the better.
Good. That's good.
Well, part of it is what you told me, you know, in that reading, and the other part is that I was reminded by what we talked about out there, my fast, that my kids got mad at me for doing.
Mm-hmm. So just to let people know, Burnie and I were talking before we started rolling the recorder here, and he's referring to a post on his website, which, by the way, is called fingeryou.blogspot.com, and it has his writings and his arts, which is quite nice. And he wrote a post called, where is it here? Abstain. And I'll read it, and then we'll talk about what happened. It says here, removing funds from banks and buying nothing. What should happen is not a boycott of mom and pop stores, locally owned businesses, pragmatism rules, and there are no rules. They are the places we should patronize. Taking your money out of the bank is not practical and can be done only if it makes sense in the personal. Dates 6 August through 8 August. The goal, you might ask, to demonstrate our power. No one, and I mean no one, is listening to us. If this succeeds, we go from there. I am going to fast starting the next few days, and I will not eat in solidarity with those across the planet who are starving. The dude cannot abide what he sees. I am nobody, but I hope you are willing to stop buying anything between those dates. If you are, spread this to your friends. Personally, I don't know what to do to change direction from the hell we are headed for, so I do this. Headed for, so I do this. So you did that. You fasted for 5 days, and what happened?
4 days.
4 days. What happened?
Besides getting in trouble with my kids, what happened was it was pointed out to me that my daughters need a stable father in their lives, not some dead, starved human being.
That's pretty real.
So we, you know, we patched it up. I mean, my kids love me, and I love them. Needless to say, with all of my heart and being. But anyways, I don't know how many people participated, but even if it was 2 people, it was 2 people more than would have done it, and it only demonstrates, like I said, our power as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
We are powerful, Robert. We're more powerful than we think we are. Yeah. And you know, I mean, okay, I'm going to change the world. Well, you don't change the world. You actually change. You go to change that outside out there. You got to go inside. It's kind of a paradox.
Yeah.
You know, you have to go deep within yourself. Like, how free are you? Do you think you're really free? Well, you are never free until you look deep within yourself and draw out all of that darkness.
Mm-hmm.
That is in every man's soul, by man I mean man anyone. But I don't know, what do you think about that?
I would agree with you. I would totally agree with you. Some mystics would say that you're either free or you're not free. There's no in between. There's no less free or more free. There is only freedom and liberation, where there is denial, sleep, and ignorance. And I'm not sure what the difference is. I mean, you know, where that demarcation is, and all of a sudden you are free. But
I assume they mean it just like I said it.
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's some resonance with that. So what happened with you with this fast, and how did that change you? I mean, what's the world looking like now?
Say that again, Robert.
So what? After you fasted, you came to the realization that your daughters needed you, but also you and I were talking about this, and in many ways, you came away from that fast with a desire to experience more life and not less. Is that right?
Yeah, actually. See, you know, what happens to me because of how I was brought up, the situation that we are in the world it deeply affects me because it makes me feel like I'm back in that house. That's what happens.
Interesting.
I have PTSD, maybe, I guess. I don't know. But anyways, I have to literally walk away from that because even in all of this darkness and all of this crap, there is light. There's always, no matter what's going on in the negative, there's always a path to take. I don't know if that's clear.
No, it's totally clear. I totally, absolutely. You know, it reminds me of there's this movie by David Mamet that's called Red Belt, and it's an okay movie, but there are some themes in the movie that are interesting. The lead actor plays a red belt. He plays a black belt, and he's a mixed martial arts guy. And he is teaching his students at the beginning of the film. With one of his students, he locks him up. He says to his student after he locks him up, there's always an escape. There's always an escape. And he eventually has to prove that to himself on a number of different levels, since it's a Mamet movie by the end of the film. But I think that that's what you're talking about, that even though that we're surrounded by darkness, that there is a shaft of light or a path of light, that if we can trace it, we can get there, and we can follow that through to wherever we need to go.
Yeah, well said. That's exactly how I think about it. And I sit out here and I look at the stars, and I just start thinking about stuff. And isn't it what a wonderful thing we have in our these rich minds, a rich consciousness, however you want to put it, that can just travel out and think about anything you want to think about, and actually it's sort of like talking with yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have a significant other, so it's me and the cat.
Yeah.
I mean, for talking to Cassie, you're talking to myself.
Well, cats can carry on a pretty good conversation sometimes.
Yeah, they do. They're funny as heck.
Yeah, absolutely. So
in the window looking at me.
So you are right around maybe just a couple years younger than my father and mother, about 4 or 5 years younger. But it still puts you in that zone where your parents were Depression-era parents, like their parents. And that was a very heavy time to be born, and a very heavy time to be a parent as well, because they were raised during the Depression, and the Depression, in my estimation, is one of the worst things that ever happened to this country, and for many reasons. Generationally, it was like a socio-economic atom bomb that blew up generations and robbed generations of wealth and people. The Depression was horrible, and it was totally manipulated and artificially. And the results weren't just financial. There were deep emotional and psychological scars and damage done at the hands of the Depression as it relates to the parents, the people that were raised during that era, and the children that they had, and what the children had to deal with Depression era parents. It was not a fun assignment.
No, it wasn't. And no matter, I'm at a point now where I can just sort of, I don't know if it's forgiveness, but I just move on. I have to deal with it in the present, not the past.
Yeah.
And they had their crosses to bear too.
Absolutely.
So you're right. But my father and mother were not poor when they grew up. By given a circumstance, they were blessed. They didn't have to struggle like most people did. And so, but yeah, it was a horrible time, and I look at now and see what's going on, and it's probably, a mirror image.
Yeah, in many ways it is a mirror image. And I think one of the first things that goes during difficult times is kindness and decency. I mean, I think that those are the things, they're considered to be luxuries during difficult times. And kindness and decency, they're really the glue. They're the social glue that holds everything together, really.
I pray for that. I pray for to be kind and gracious.
Yeah.
And I'm not always, I'm not always.
Neither am I. No, we all have our moments. I totally get that. But
I try to hold myself up, and I fall down a lot. The trick is getting back to just pick yourself back up again.
Yeah. That's true. Absolutely. Let's read something off your blog. This is one of your latest posts, and I just love this. And I hope I do it justice, because it took my breath away, this post. I got to tell you. So let me do this. Here we go. It says, Mysterium, the plant's gift. This day I met you yet again, as we've met in primordial lasts. We've slept in the night of Brahman and lived 1,000 times his day. We are lovers. Fierce warriors, we gazed upon his countenance, the other, known fear and smiled at him yet. I clove my sword into the gate. The demon's glittering eyes beheld me. My death, my heart's remembrance of its valor. I had bugs crawling all over me. On the floor, on the walls, they shimmered with such beauty. I laughed and asked, what universe are you from? Dumb question. I laughed again. The unnamed one has been faced by us this day in trembling awe. He has wreaked his horror. I'm at a loss between two realities that know each other not in this modern techno-materialistic world. The other one is hidden, maligned, and viewed with disrespect and no value, when in fact it is priceless. I cannot convey its imagery. It lives inside a plant of universal consciousness. He does have lowly denizens of the solar system and base corruptors of Gaia's harmonious song, an obscenity that will be corrected. Their ravenous appetite has brought them to themselves. Incredibly loving, the beautiful serpent smiled at me, with her mysterious smile of infinite gnosis, bade me look to what the demon's progeny had wrought. Chaos and dust, thunderous noise, metal on metal, explosions, blood, the detritus of our folly. The maelstrom contained every possibility at the same moment, all outcomes. The other turned his horror his face of jumping spiders and walked away. Power dimmed. He would always be there, waiting for his cycle to begin again, to curse man with ignorance and fear. Shiva danced in a frenzy, entranced in his destruction. It blew, all of it. The energy was immense, but it had to be. This was sensual, loving creation. Out of this blinding, white, many-faceted light we flew, glowing hot, sleek with sweat. Our love a moment brief, an eternity of thee. I stroked your hair with my lips and breathed your smell. Our undying love birthed the universe, a sun, a newborn day, and knew in sadness and in joy we would see each other around someday. Shiva beatific smiled at his creation and danced again, tears running down his cheeks, an eternal dance to the darkest night, where, and this is where I can't really read these lines, they're too small. They're very small. I can't, did you do that on purpose?
No, I didn't. It's a quote from another site, and I probably need to clean that up a little bit. Sorry.
That's okay. And now I unfortunately went away from your site. Hold on, now I got to go back there. Reopen last, close my note. Take me right back there. Get back here. Let me just end this. This is tremendous. This it says, how true this is. Shiva danced into the light. His terrible beauty bestowed before him this new day. My allies, the serpents, their beauty, wisdom, love eternal, waiting for travelers like me. A gift I never dreamed existed, yet was always there. Now that is really cool. What stirred this? This is to me, this is very Blakean. This is like Blake in hell, and Blake having a very fine time in hell. Okay, what stirred this up for you?
I don't know. It just I can't claim credit for it. I literally don't know how I do. Stuff comes out of me. It was what I was thinking about when I took the mushrooms, if I can say that.
Sure, you can say it.
It grew from the experience. Is all I can say. There's a lady on. So I'm walking away from it a little bit, but there's a lady on TED Talks who gave a speech on writing and the fear writers have of not being able to duplicate their last great work. And the ancient Greeks had the muse. They used the muse, that mechanism. Well, blame it on the muse. I don't have any control over this.
Well,
that's basically what she said, and I don't know how things come out of me. They just do. I don't have a way to describe it.
So when after you wrote that and sat there and you put it up on your website and you read it, what did you think?
Well, you just made me cry. It made me cry. And in joy and sadness.
Uh-huh.
But for you to read that, you have no idea what this is like for me. To actually have someone recognize me as a human being. I don't know how to say this, but that's how it feels. I have something to say, and maybe somebody will like it, maybe they won't, but I have something to say, and you're receptive to it, and I can't tell you how wonderful that is.
Well, look, I studied English literature in college, and I know a little bit about poetry, and I got to tell you, this is wonderful. It's an incredibly lyrical and transcendent. It's visionary poetry, so I would absolutely resonate with it. Now, this came out of a mushroom experience, right? And the first time you and I talked, you talked a little bit about that mushroom experience. I mean, that was really life-changing for you, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. Because I I actually emailed Visible and told them about my minor Kundalini experience. Well, I was sitting here and I heard this noise, a gristle on gristle, and all of a sudden I lost focus with my eyes. I couldn't see. I could only see from my other eye, my third eye.
Uh-huh.
However briefly that happened. But at the same time, my spine was starting to vibrate. You know, and it only went up to in line with my hips. But I recognized what it was. It wasn't a contrived, it wasn't the energy from the mushroom. It was, what I'm trying to say is, how you get amped up and you take it and it makes you shake and everything. Terrence McKenna always recommends rolling a few bombers.
Oh, man. Yeah, that sounds like...
I don't know what I'm allowed to talk about.
You can talk about anything. Trust me, it's all good. I've had Alexis Tyler on my show. You can talk about anything. So...
Okay. Anyway, it was, all of a sudden my spine was quivering, and nothing ever happens to me, Robert. I'll sit out here and talk to the gods, and tell them what I want. And what I want is never power or money or anything like that. That's a waste of time.
Yeah.
But anyways, it was a very intense experience. At one point, I was looking into the reaches of this, and it was like bottomless. I was challenging. It's a courageous act for me to take that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it's like for other people, but I contemplate it before I do it. I prepare myself.
Right.
But it was such the beauty of what I saw. I sound like a high school kid, but I saw the fabric of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw, it's sort of like, everything's connected to everything else. In physics, if one electron passes another electron, it has a permanent relationship with that electron. In other words, everything is connected to everything.
Right, yeah.
And that's in quantum physics. Spiritually, I think eventually science and spirituality will come together as one thing, because that's the only way it can go.
Well, we would hope that they would all come together, because then we could have a spiritual relationship with technology and science, and something not determined by some Darwinian, strongest, smartest, best, fastest will determine the rules of engagement with new technologies. So I'm with you on that.
Well, I just read a quote, and basically what it said was, the development of culture and technology without its spiritual side is doomed to destruction. Did I say that so you can understand?
Well, I mean, when you think about what's happening, with CERN and the quote-unquote God particle, or the approximation of the God particle, whatever it is that they found, those types of quotes become very powerful and really stand out in relation to what they're doing in places like that.
Yeah, I wonder sometimes what exactly is it that they all do.
I think they're working on a Stargate. That's what I think they're doing.
You think so?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what I think they're trying to I think they're trying to jump time and space through a Stargate. That's my sense.
Well, maybe so.
Yeah. But Stargates are two-way, though, right? They're two-way. I mean, you can go out, but other things can come through that Stargate as well. So it's not just, I mean, the looking glass or the mirror is a two-way experience. So they've got, who knows what they're also bringing into this world in as much as what they're trying to get out of it.
After reading, is it Christopher Knowles? Is that?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
After reading his site, his premise, I think, or the other guy, the deconstruction zone, they're two peas in a pod. Anyway, what they say about how it's traveled from distant places in the universe is probably not what's going on. It's whatever is happening is local, but it is happening. There's too much going on. Too many people have seen too many different things. Too many people have had too many experiences that no one can explain.
Right.
For it to be somebody's imagination.
Right.
It's just not. And Jinn, from the Quran, these entities probably really do exist. They were describing, what did he call it? I can't remember. I apologize.
No, there's a name for them, and it always slips out of my tongue too. These are the beings that John D. Would conjure up. I know exactly. Yeah, and you can bring them, and they've brought them macrobes. They're called macrobes. MACROBES, macrobes.
Okay.
And so the whole idea behind, so this is what John D. did. This is what magicians have done. Kabbalistic, Enochian magicians have been doing this since they, found Boaz and Jachin washing upon the shores of North Africa in Egypt, where they took over the high priesthood of Atlantis. This is where all that knowledge comes from, and it's about the invocation of these macrobes. And apparently, you can create the space for these macrobes to come through, and that you stay in your circle, and you get to question them, and you get to do all kinds of different things. Now, there are different levels of macrobes. There's lower levels, and apparently the really high-level macrobes are, we're talking demons now. These are what these are. These are interdimensional entities, and these entities, the ones that are really, the kick-ass rock and roll Lizard King entities, those are brought through by not just one person, but a number of people. That it's a group experience, and the more people you have at these summonings or these interdimensional meetings, the quote unquote more powerful the macrobe or entity that comes through. Now you add a whole other layer of things like sacrifice. Then there's a whole nother layer that comes through, and when we look at these sort of these rituals that take place in places that we can't, we're not really privy to, then we have these external rituals like the Olympics or like the Super Bowl, and this is really for the masses. What this is that these are masses for the masses. It's exactly what they are. And they're getting the masses indoctrinated into the receptive mode of bringing these energies and these spirits into this world. That's what I see is happening.
Well, what are you getting when you get astral spirits into this world? I mean, you're not going to be controlling the spirit.
No.
That powerful. The ones that you're describing.
No, absolutely. It's an illusion of control.
The elite want to live forever, you know. That's what, you know.
That's exactly what they want to do. Yeah, you're right.
You know, and
you notice they never...
Robert, I'm sorry. I just blanked on you for someone came to do.
That's okay.
Can you give me 1 second?
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Hey, Mike, the door's open. Yeah.
So let me just lay this on you, and then what we'll do is we'll circle back a little bit, and I'll let you visit with your friend. But here,
that's all right. That's all right. Get to hear. I don't get to talk to people like you very much, so.
I would love your opinion on this, right? Because you're 70 years old. I mean, you've been around a little bit. You've done some media watching. You know who the players are. But Burnie, these people never die. I mean, if you think about it, sure, Richard Nixon died. Yeah, Reagan died. But the rest of them have not died. Henry Kissinger, still around, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. Jesus, I just wish they'd go away. We got such a beautiful world if everyone was, you know, really a little more aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
But what I think is that, well, I don't like to talk about doom and gloom necessarily, but we're going to have to go through a trial by fire. And out of that fire, just that vision that I had on that trip was exactly like a presentation of reality in a sense. And we're going to have to go through a trial, either from space or from the insanity that mankind is living with right.
Yeah.
But that's the precursor to that golden age. You know, Jay Widener, is that his name right?
Yeah, well, Jay Widener, yeah,
Widener. Well, he told me, I remember watching him speak one night. He drew 2 toroids and sort of a funnel through them, and describing the ages from the Satya Yuga to the Kali Yuga. And we are over into the cup, and it's a cone shape, so the farther down we go, the faster things spin.
Right.
And until everything is happening at once. And it's sort of, you know, I don't know necessarily Terence McKenna's time wave zero is totally accurate or as far as time goes, but it's totally accurate philosophically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the facts of the matter are that we are in a humongous sea change right now. And it's going, you know, it sounds funny, but it's going to get better. Maybe I won't be alive for that getting better, but it will change for the better. And people will be smarter, closer to the source of all things, whatever that is.
Right.
You know, I don't believe in Jehovah whatsoever, but I certainly think there's a higher power.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is or how it is.
Right. Yeah.
There's too much beautiful mystery in the world. The ancient peoples of this planet were very, very smart. You know, much smarter than we are, I think.
Well, they could certainly.
How do you lift a 1,000-ton rock?
Yeah, well, you do it with maybe some hyperdimensional gravitational fields, something along those lines.
I just tuned one of my guitars to 8432, which is sacred geometry of sound, and it sounds pretty good.
It takes a little while to get used to, but once you get into the AA432, it has a real resonant feeling on the rest of the body. That's such a scam turning everything into A440. It was just a total scam.
Well, what do you know about that?
Well, I know that from my friend Alan Howarth, who has Raw Music, RA Music. Alan, along with J.J. Hertock, and the other guys like Forrest, he and J.J. Hertock went to the Great Pyramid, and they went to the Sphinx, and they did these measurements, and they basically came up with this mathematical formula with all these measurements that the Sphinx, it was actually the Sphinx more than the Great Pyramid. The Sphinx was constructed on A432. They were able to actually find this in the architecture.
How did they do that?
They measured it off. They actually went to Egypt, and they were on the inside. So they did it on the inside of the king's chamber, of the pharaoh's chamber, on the Great Pyramid. They were there. They got in there. And they measured that off. And then they measured off the Sphinx, like the base of the Sphinx, and the measurements were they correlated, and they were able to convert it into A432. That's what they were able to find. So
I have to email me a link to that, or if there is something.
Well, I have an interview with Alan on my website. I'll send you the link to the interview. Alan is an interesting guy. He did all the sound effects for all of John Carpenter's movies, and he did all the sound effects for all of the pre-J.J. Abrams Star Trek films. He's a Hollywood sound master, and he's a very interesting, very spiritual guy. I love Alan. He's a great guy. He's a Leo. In fact, I think it was his birthday just recently. Anyway, he's done all the work on this stuff. And so based on what I know from Alan is that right around I think it might have been in the 19th century, I think it was the 19th century is when they shifted the scale over to A440. And I've heard that it was the Rothschilds. This is what Alan, I think, has alluded to. And I've heard other people back this up, that it was a Rothschild sort of directive that the scale would change. And that everything that we've listened to ever since then is chaos, and on some level. It invokes chaos.
They want to steal everything from us, don't they?
Well, they'd love to, because they don't have anything, really. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those people have all this power and all this money, and I don't know, they're just dust inside. I always think of these things filled with brown dust.
It would appear to be that way, certainly.
But yeah, the 440 was arbitrary. I was reading, I don't know why, I had a friend, God bless his soul, named Jim. He was a wonderful man. He was a piano tuner. And he would tell me, I'm one of those people that likes to hear about everything. and I want to know everything I can possibly know. And he would tell me about tuning pianos and about adjusting them and stuff. And one night after I'd been talking to him, I went home and read this whole long, dry article on tuning pianos and getting rid of the wolf tone and all of the G, it's a G against another note. I forgot what it is. But the point is that we have this music, and it could be, you're right, it does create chaos. Listen to it. You already have some, not that it's bad music necessarily, but it's sheer dark. What's that guy's name? the Pluto Scorpio guy.
The Pluto Scorpio guy. What guy is that?
The rapper.
Oh, Tyler the Creator.
Yeah, Tyler the Creator.
Man, that is some dark stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is good.
Yeah, he's putting it out there, huh?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, that and it's and a lot of it is quite intentional too, by the way. So it's not just this archetypal working out of things. Although that is there, some of it is very intentionally dark. But the other thing too with A440 is that even if the music, let's say for instance, even if it was say Satie and it was A440, it would still have its own slight dissonance, because it wouldn't be, it would be artificial. It would not be at the natural scale. So even things that wouldn't be dark still invocate some type of chaos based on the A440.
It almost seems to me that there is something going on over and above the Rothschilds.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's something else going on.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is, but I mean, I've read, about the archons, and maybe that's it. I have no idea.
Yeah, there's definitely something interdimensional happening here, and it has to do with timelines of parallel Earths. That's my take.
You think?
Yeah, I do, and I think what's happening, I think what this 2012 event is presaging is the potential for these timelines to get worked out and to realign and become one timeline again. I think that's what this is about. Or if you look at the timelines as being alternate Earths, and I do believe in an alternate Earth or an alternate reality that mirrors this reality. It's the potential. It's the potential for that reality to get synced up with this one, and that's what I feel like we're headed. This is the concrescence that McKenna, I believe, was talking about.
Yeah, I love that word.
It's a great word, huh? Concrescence.
Yeah.
You can't use that word every day, by the way.
Okay.
That was just me saying that rhetorically. So it's not a word that comes up in conversation every day.
No, you don't use. I would go to work sometimes, and I have I like words, so I use them.
Yeah.
And these guys would look at me, and who the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
I'm like with all these guys, and we're all heavy equipment operators, but I'm kind of like the odd man out.
Bernie, I'm sure that you're the heaviest of the heavy equipment operators, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Hey, well, listen, I've had a great time talking with you tonight, and I want you to go visit with your friend. So, but it's been great talking with you and getting to know you a little bit more. And I urge people to go to your website because it's a cool website. So
I'm thinking a little bit more about what I'm writing. I keep practicing.
Well, you're going to have an audience, so you better think about it, and more people are going to go to your website now. So they're going to, you've got to invoke the muse now, Bernie. This is your job.
You get all nervous now.
So your website is fingeryou.blogspot.com. It's all one is the subtitle. This is a war zone. Speak to the general. She doesn't know shit either. That's a great subtitle. And it's an inspirational site. If you want to get a little hit of inspiration, go to Burnie's site and read some of his words and check out his really cool photography, which is based on mirror images and Gemini and this whole Gemini thing that I've been getting into lately. It's all there on the site. So thanks. What's that?
Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Are we off the air?
Not yet. I'm going to officially end this right now, okay?
Okay.
All right.
So that was Max Bunko, a.k.a. Burnie, and I apologize for the sound on that. This was, the best interviews sound-wise when people call in live, and he was nervous about calling in live, and we agreed to do the interview offline. And offline it's kind of a catch-as-catch-can thing. If the person talking to me on their end has a tinny phone or the connection isn't great, then I just have to kind of roll with it. The best is when we're both on the same line, the Blog Talk line, and it gets ironed out, and the sound quality is quite good. But today also, I had uploaded the the wrong file, so I had to do that in real time and then play it live across my computer versus it being in the Blog Talk queue. Would not have made that much of a difference, so I will share that with you. Okay. All right, so that's it. Thank you for hanging in there with me and going through some of the technical difficulties today. Mars is in Scorpio. The Sun is in Virgo. Very interesting time that we would have this quote-unquote shooter with the Mars in Scorpio, or the arrival of Mars in Scorpio. I was just online a little bit trying to get some more information about that. And one of my Facebook friends is a gun aficionado and a gun expert, and he's very into crafting his own firearms. He's a good guy, actually. And he was talking about how the cops in New York apparently actually shot more people than the alleged gunman. So there was some fire that came about from New York City police that wounded people as well. So, crazy. Anyway, keep your eye on that as we head into the Republican convention on Sunday. I think it's Sunday. It's either Saturday or Sunday. I think it's Sunday. It's a big deal. And there is a major tropical storm brewing off the coast of Florida at the same time. And there are people that have been talking about that this could be yet another potential false flag event. And another thing that bears watching around this is the inclusion or the exclusion of the Ron Paul delegates. That should be very interesting to see how all that goes down at the Republican convention. It should be great theater no matter what happens. So there we go. It is coming your way live to a major news network near you. All right. Have a great weekend and do your absolute best to stay in love and in truth. And as always, use your head to discern what's real and your heart to stay open to what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. I want to thank Max, a.k.a. Burnie. You can go to his website, fingerthis.blogspot.com, and check out his poetry, his blog entries, and his photos. He's a very, very sweet guy, and again, overcame a lot of adversity in his life to carve out a life of meaning and dignity. And what more can we ask for, really? All right, I'll see you guys on Monday with the mashup, and have an absolutely stupendous weekend. Adios.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression regression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.